Welcome to the Future of Field Service podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. Today, we're going to be talking about what it takes to bring the as-a-service vision to life. I'm joined today by James Galloway, who is the head of product marketing for commercial UK and Ireland at Baxi Heating. James, welcome to the Future of Field Service podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
That was a mouthful. Okay. So Baxi is on the journey to bring heat as a service to its customer base. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about James's experience and Baxi's experience in terms of, why we're on this journey or you're on this journey, what some of the drivers for that are, what some of the reasons or ways are that you think it will benefit the various stakeholders, and then just some of what you've experienced thus far. So before we get into all of that, tell everyone a little bit more about yourself, anything you want to share about yourself, your role, and then for those that are not UK, just a little bit about Baxi's business.
Cool. Sure. So my name is James Galloway. I'm head of product marketing for UK and Ireland business. Now that's with Baxi Heating, which is the brand, one of the major brands for BDR Thermea Group. So that's BDR Thermea Group is the owning company. We operate worldwide in more than 100 countries with turnover of just over 2.1 billion euros. So quite a sizable company, market leader in commercial heating, and also a major company in residential heating as well. We also do cooling, so it's really about HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning is our sole focus as a company. Now in the UK, we've been present for a long time, more than 150 years now. So we've got a long legacy through merger and acquisition as well. We've grown, but we've got a lot of experience. Really, we're a manufacturing company. That's what we are as an organization. So we're extremely good at making millions of products, exactly the same, high quality, and selling them as a transactional sale. That's our business model. Mm-hmm. So we employ almost 9,000 people across the world, largely within Europe, but global presence.
Good. Okay. So we're embarking on the journey of transitioning from selling these products to delivering them as a service. How would you describe where Baxi is on that journey today?
So it is a journey. We've got a roadmap which we've developed together with some of the academic partners and industry partners as part of a kind of a servitization project, which we can talk a little bit about later. But it describes this kind of journey towards servitization, and in very simplistic terms, I think we're step maybe 1.5 or 2 out of 3 in super simple terms. So we've got a product, we offer servicing, we service. We have a service level agreement where we go and fix maintenance issues of a heating product, typically within 24 hours, typically much faster than that actually. Mostly ourselves, but also with service partners. So we're doing that really well today. Mm-hmm. What we are not doing is, or just kind of starting to explore leasing, so finance models, mm-hmm. Which we can combine with the servicing to, offer products on finance and also almost guarantee the heating. So almost guaranteeing, because if there's a failure, we're not yet able to predict that. We're pretty close mm-hmm. With a kind of predictive maintenance and preventive maintenance. So we're just starting to do remote diagnostics, one way and two way. Now, HeatasaService, it's all of that and more. It's actually being able to share the usage of heating, which is controlled by the consumer, and then we guarantee the delivery of whatever the consumer is asking for, typically through an app mm-hmm. or some kind of control interface, depending on the customer type. So that's quite a big leap actually from from kind of steps 1 and 2, where we're offering the products on a transactional basis, but also the maintenance side. So it is quite a big step, largely through we can talk about in more detail, but largely because of that, the systems that you need to have to actually make all of that work. Millions of data points simultaneously being analyzed to make sure that you can respond, or predictively, proactively, prevent a maintenance issue from coming up to guarantee that heat outcome. But it's a really exciting point because it's the hockey stick moment. So I'd say we're just on the cusp of that hockey stick moment. Very close to being able to actually feasibly and viably demonstrate a Heat-as-a-Service in its full form.
Yeah, that's really exciting. So let's talk a little bit about some of the drivers for this journey. So if we take a step back from where you are, let's talk about, what were the reasons that Baxi decided to go this route?
There are lots of strategic routes that we're following, but this one specifically, it's on our strategy, and we've invested in it because it solves a really important customer dilemma. And one is, and largely because it's about affordability of specific technology types that help to decarbonize. So now Baxi and BDR Thermea, predominantly customers buy gas heated products, gas fueled products from us. We also manufacture heat pumps, direct electric heating. We're investing a lot in hydrogen heating as well, with live prototypes and demonstrations in the field. But our customers, they are buying gas products from us most of the time because it's the cheapest. And a lot of our customers, they really want to install lower carbon forms of heating. Let's take heat pumps as an example. They are, however, much more expensive. The hardware is more expensive, much lower volume, so the cost of manufacturers is higher. And so there's a dilemma for a customer who wants to decarbonize, but they can't afford it. And that's where Heat-as-a-Service can really help with that. What's different from Heat-as-a-Service from a finance model, because a finance model also solves that dilemma. A finance model, you can amortize the upfront capital cost over a contract term, and so you also solve that issue. But Heat-as-a-Service specifically puts the control in the hands of the consumer. And that is the key bit, is because that, especially today's world, recently we've seen global events, geopolitical events, which have really increased the cost of fuel. And so we've got the cost of, here, especially in the UK, cost of living crisis, which is in the news all the time. So it's exacerbated this customer problem of A, wanting to decarbonize, B, and reduce dependency on gas, but B, have it affordable, And then there's a third point, C, having control of that. And, being able to decide, okay, do I need to, what's more important for me? Save money or have more heating comfort, or even better, choose where you really need the heating hot water comfort. So in a household context, that would be, well, maybe you don't need to heat your study or your back bedroom or something all days of the week. So you can really choose and select how you economically heat your home, or if you're a commercial business, how you heat and provide hot water for your premises. For example, a hotel, you might not, depending on your occupancy rates, you economically heat and provide hot water for your property. So that's the it's the dilemma, but also improved control and improved usage. It's been quite clever about how we provide and use heat and hot water.
Mm-hmm. So ultimately, the primary driver or drivers are really around how heating is evolving based on environmental factors, and the fact that makes the product itself more expensive. So we need to look for different business models to make the new products affordable for customers to be able to leverage.
That's right. Yeah, on a very simplistic level, we exist as a company to solve problems for our customers, and Heat-as-a-Service, outcome-based service business models in general. That it's simply a solution to fix a problem. There are other solutions which fix that problem, but we feel that specifically Heat-as-a-Service is one of the best solutions for A, helping to reduce that upfront cost, and B, put better control in. And it's just a solution. If we can do it really well and it satisfies that problem, of course, as an organization, we will prosper from that as well.
Right. And it's a good point. You said there are other solutions. And, that's almost always the case. But I think one of the big benefits of as a service is the simplicity, right? So rather than the idea of, okay, well, we could finance your product, then you could pay for this service, it becomes more effort for customers to understand and track, et cetera, when it's just you need X, we provide X, and you pay Y, right? It's a simpler customer experience, really.
Right, we're really used to that now. I mean, look at Uber, for example. I suppose it's a good example. It's done exactly that. They formed, when is it? About 10 years ago now. And they're really taking advantage of technologies which are now, everyone's got a mobile phone. Now, you've got that ability to use technologies, and also you've got customers who are familiar with it, so that there's a level of readiness to adopt a new way of doing things. It's making it simpler. It's about using the technology around us to do what we've done before, but in a simpler way. So I think you're exactly right with that.
Yeah, and I think in some areas it's not only a readiness but a demand, right? So it that varies industry to industry, but I think the message, at least for us, for service organizations, is, hey, this is the path that we're on. We used to say, well, customers don't care about products; they just want service, meaning the experience, right? And I think now it's customers don't really care about products or service; they just want the outcome, right? Obviously, both are imperative to the outcome, but they don't care about the details. They just want to be able to trust that whatever you do is going to work how they need it when they need it, period. And the onus is on companies like Baxi to figure out, okay, so if this is the demand, how do we meet it? And that, almost always means doing things differently. Yeah. Okay.
I was just going to say that most consumers don't know or care about their heating product. There are always you've always got technically oriented or consumers, and you've always got people who do have genuine interest in what the heating product and technology is, not just at the point of purchase or coming up to the point of purchase, but through the lifetime. But the majority don't, and so you're exactly right. It's just what's the outcome. That's what people care about.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Okay, so we talked a bit about how this, as a service model benefits Baxi's customers. So it allows them to move toward a, perhaps cost restrictive more environmentally friendly option. And it allows them to have better control over their usage and their ultimately what they're purchasing from Baxi. Let's talk a little bit about how you feel it will benefit Baxi as an organization.
Well, we're really trying to sell more heat pumps. And by the way, HeatasaService, it's not just for heat pumps; it's for all technologies that provide heat and hot water. HeatasaService applies to all of them, but it's specifically useful as a solution for heat pumps because they are more expensive, and we want to sell more of them. It actually helps us to sell more because then our cost of operations goes down. We can, our fixed costs reduce. We can do that better. But until we can help customers to overcome those cost barriers, which they're currently encountering, the uptake is going to be restricted, right? So it helps us as an organization because we can increase the uptake of the product, and that helps us. It helps finance our projects. You have to have strong commercial viability in any project, new development, when you're looking to invest. So if you can demonstrate a higher uptake, that ultimately helps us, not just with our current, what we're doing, but also future strategic choices, investments, things like that. So as a business model, to introduce that, it will help us to accelerate, the investment in that new technology type. And that's something that, as an organization, we must respond to. It's not so. There's another side of that in the form of legislation. So we have, in the UK, as a total government, the government have set out a target to be net zero by 2050 and 78% reduction in CO2 by 2035. In terms of product technology, legislative effects or impacts, for commercial buildings, you will not be able to put in gas-heated products from 2030 onwards. For residential new build, that's from 2025. So that really near-term legislative significant impacts. So that's also, it's really significant for the organization. So by introducing a new business model which helps the uptake of heat pumps specifically, and other zero or low carbon technologies, it helps us to, be on track and ready for these legislative timelines that are coming up pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, if we think about the reason those legislation, regulatory things exist, it's because we know that we all need to be doing more to protect the environment, right? So that's kind of the third benefit, is also to the environment itself. And so, you're taking, first you're taking a technology that's cost prohibitive and finding a way to make it affordable for people to put in place to replace, some of the less environmentally friendly options. Two, you're allowing customers to have more control over usage, which obviously, has an impact as well. And then, the other thing that we see in the trend of servitization in terms of how it impacts the environment is, it gives companies more freedom over putting measures in place to provide service more efficiently, because you're providing the outcome versus billable hours, right? So it's, there's the more latitude to say, okay, well, let's look at remote diagnostics. Let's look at remote service. Let's do these things without customers saying, well, we're not going to pay for that because you're not on site, right? It doesn't matter because they're paying for the outcome, right? So then you have an opportunity to become more efficient, both environmentally and then also cost-wise, right, for the organization and how you deliver service. So it is a really interesting conversation.
And those are the big building blocks that underpin the offering of that service, the effective offering of that service. So, Heat-as-a-Service sounds great. And also, by the way, what does Heat-as-a-Service mean? It sounds great in the strategy document. So we should talk about, how you get through to consumers into really what it means. I don't think a lot of consumers, when you say Heat-as-a-Service, they know exactly what it means. But let's come to that in a moment. But that the building blocks are actually effectively offering that. Like you said, actually it's about remote diagnostics. It's about preventive diagnostics and the next step of remote diagnostics. It's about taking all that data and having a really slick and effective and efficient field operations, especially in the context of maintenance. And so, today we have hundreds of field engineers, all in vans, stocked with components, every hour going to visit customers in the UK. And so that, just if you can imagine, improved scheduling and going to site not twice, because you go one to investigate and go back a second time with the right part, but just going once. That's a huge saving on fuel. You increase your utilization
Right.
of the team. That's a cost saving for us, and it's an improved experience for the customer as well. But all those operational ingredients are necessary, before you can even get to that effective offering of Heat as a service. So those are really, really important parts to being able to offer that service.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, just reflecting on what you said, I think we talk about that part quite a bit, some of the things that underpin the ability to deliver this model. But there's two things I want to ask you about specifically. One is going back to the point you just made, which is, how do you articulate the offering to customers in a way that they understand and, find valuable?
So we did a trial in 2019 together with the Energy Systems Catapult, which is a UK government organisation, which is designed to help private companies to trial innovations. So we did this trial with them in 2019, and part of that research and project was that we changed the naming to warmth hours. So warmth hours is something that's it's tangibly, understandable, away from heat as a service, which is, it's not what it says, and it means something to us, but it doesn't mean something to the typical customer. So warmth hours was something, and there were lots of different names that were discussed, but warmth hours it really neatly said it in a simple way that's understandable, and by doing that, we found that we had better engagement from customers because they knew what it was really about. So when they were using the app, which is something new and different, then they were able to understand, okay, I'm selecting the warmth hours that I want in that room as a schedule. So almost like a bit like an alarm clock on your phone. You set the times. It's very similar, but for heating and setting the temperature. So that was a really important insight that we got from that project about how we enhance that awareness and engagement with the consumers. So that was important.
That makes sense. And I think it's a really important point because it's one of the struggles I see companies having, which is, for an organization that has a deep, rich history, this level of change can be challenging, right? And so you do all of this work to, understand it, to communicate internally, to get everyone on the same page, to set a strategy, et cetera, and then take all of that internal talk and just send it out and then wonder, well, wait, why isn't this resonating, right? And so, it is really important to understand that the way we talk about this as an industry, as a business, is not necessarily the same way our customers will want to hear the value proposition. And that doesn't mean you're starting over. It's just reframing it into what matters to them. I always point to this example. I had a conversation once with a gentleman who was super frustrated because he was saying, we've invested in IoT and I don't understand why none of our customers want to buy it. Right. And it's like, because they don't care, And so it doesn't mean that having IoT isn't important to whatever the value is they were trying to deliver. It's just that you're talking about it in terms that your customers, don't connect with. Right. So I think that's a really important aspect.
A really great metaphor I heard once was, and easy one to think about is you design the key for the lock, not the other way around. And HeatasaService certainly for BDR Thermea it is a business model transformation. It's different to how things are being done today and have been done in the past. And so that's effort, right? It's not like it was just the easiest thing for us to do and we're looking for customers. It's the other way around, and that's so important to have customer-led problem statements that you're thinking, okay, well, how do I solve that? And so that, and then challenging your assumptions, and going and seeking that insight and really being thorough with that to then frame your proposition and how you build a solution around that real genuine insight and take on the challenges and, challenge your preconceptions. That's so important. And that's, it's taken us, 2019, it's already now 3 years ago. and that was already when we did the project. It was already thought about before that. So it's quite a long time, but I think it's really important to take the time to to understand, take a step back, redesign, move forward. So yeah, absolutely, customer first. Really think about the problem statements that you want to solve, and then what's the right way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, James, is related to the revenue model, right? Because this is another aspect of moving toward as a service or true servitization that I think companies get hung up on, right? Manufacturers, okay? It's one thing if you're a service organization or service business that is just transitioning from, a contract or billable hours to a, you know, subscription model, right? Like that's a bit simpler. When we're talking about a product manufacturer who, traditionally has operated on a CapEx model and recognized revenue that way, reconciled revenue that way, planned, et cetera, it's a far bigger leap. And so I just am wondering if there's anything you can say. And I know you're not 100% there yet, but obviously as a business, you understand what that means, what it will change, et cetera. So can you talk a little bit about that aspect of things and how, you kind of wrap your heads around, what needs to change internally to be able to provide that?
I think it's a good question. I think there are a number of different aspects to that. So first of all, how do we manage the finance risk? And what kind of finance partners are the right ones to work with? Going from 100% upfront, revenue and margin to potentially zero upfront, those are choices, and I think that depends on the customer type. So we segment our customers, and of course, all customers have a certain level of credit risk. And so there are decisions there regarding how much risk are you willing to take on, or if not yourselves, then the business, the finance partners, what does that risk profile look like? I think what's interesting is to think about not just the segmentation, but also how you go about getting the finance. So within the UK, we're well regulated. We've got Financial Conduct Authority (FCA), that's very well regulated, and there are ways about getting financed for projects within the UK. I was speaking to with the Advanced Services Group, where just launched a project actually, a UK government funded project through Innovate UK for HeatasaService demonstration. We call the project Digital Servitization Demonstrator, and it's an all sector demonstrator of outcome oriented services. It's not just for heating as a service. But first, that's what it was about. And one of our partners in that project, Cool Mill, really great company. Check them out if you're interested to look at what really progressive as a service looks like. It's KOOLMILL. They're a rice milling company. So they are looking at cross-border finance. So they manufacture in the UK, but they're selling outside of the UK. So one of their challenges is how do they find finance for cross-border, trade? And that's it's unregulated. It's not. It's not unregulated. There are no frameworks in place to really support that in the right way. So that's those are challenges as well. It's because it's so new. This business model. It's not yet well established, and so that's a challenge. So I think when you're looking at how to handle that, those are real issues in terms of a scale up of a model. When you're looking at expanding your business model into other markets. So unless you're willing to kind of set up an organization within a country so that you can operate strictly within that country, that seems to be harder at the moment. So I think there's work to do in terms of governments introducing the right legal frameworks around finance for cross-border, and that's what Cool Mill are looking at now or facing at the moment. So there's some work for us to do there as well, I think, within industry to understand what's the best method for that. So I think that's another aspect. I think one important aspect regarding kind of organizational business decisions or choices is also cost of finance. So, finding the right finance partner is important, but a consideration currently is that if you are looking for finance which meets certain ESG criteria, so sustainability criteria, then you will get better interest rates. So one of our customers that we're speaking to recently, they were telling us, or one of our kind of trying to partner with, telling us that actually they can get finance, half a percentage cheaper or more, if they're able to show certain sustainability benefits. So that's in an environment where interest rates are increasing, the cost of finance is increasing. There are significant benefits from being able to actually use a different business model that requires finance, but decarbonized or improve sustainability. So I think there's a new perspective that's all new. Finance has been very cheap recently, but as that changes, how will that change the decision making of finance directors? So I think lots happening. It's happening. It's all now. I think it's the environment for scaled up as a service. It's a bit harder because of some of those legal frameworks that are not yet in place, but within a country, absolutely is possible within a country, and in fact, it's incentivized. You can get better interest rates, so that's really great. We're starting to see banks really take that very seriously, and so that's So it's quite a big question. It's a really good question, and it's a big unknown for a company which is a manufacturing organization, familiar with transactional sales. It is a bit of an unknown, but that's the role of partners. We see a significant importance in collaborating to help us, filling in some of those maybe strategic gaps that we have.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and I think it's also worth mentioning that it is an unknown, but it hasn't stopped you from moving forward, because the recognition of the need to evolve to this model is stronger than the fear of the unknown, or the potential whatever hurdles of the unknown. And so that's I think a good point, because sometimes companies try to answer every unknown before they start, and that presents some really big challenges as well.
That's true, and I should add, on reflection, look at Rolls-Royce, power by the hour. That really was, that was done in the 70s, half a century ago. So, it's new for us. That's actually a better way of framing it. It's new for us, and that's one of the real significant, I think, barriers to internal uptake of a new business model is familiarizing with the unknown, which is risk, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty in that, and that's a key. That's why this project that we've recently done, the Digital Servitization Demonstrator project, it's really important, because it means you by having a physical environment and space to go and see, working examples of digitized services of hardware, show the business models, and then discuss the steps and challenges. It's there. It's right in front of you. You can have that discussion, and that's really important to talk out those challenges from every functional perspective. So from an internal stakeholder buy-in perspective, and and collaboration from all the different functional perspectives, that's really important. So that's we've just launched that, so it's really new for us, but we've already seen a lot of benefits just in a month already of having that space available to actually go and challenge internal preconceptions, and then try and solve some of those internal issues.
Yeah. So we've talked about quite a few of the challenges that Baxi has faced, that companies can expect to face. Are there any we haven't touched on that we should talk about?
I think I think it's worth talking about collaboration and partnerships. So, kind of an acknowledgement that if you do want to scale up, but your organization isn't big enough for the opportunity, So if I look at HeatasaService, there's 28 million households in the UK, residential dwellings. We cannot do maintenance on 28 million households, at the same time, to serve maintenance issues. So there's a reliance on third parties there. And one of our kind of research partners is Donaldson Engines. They're also looking at this. They're also a great company, really worth looking into, and very progressive with what they're doing. They were telling us, how they go about finding the right partners, and they've got a really interesting model, which is pay as you go, or we will fix it for you, or we will work with someone who will fix it. And they're just the way that they've split up their business model, take to market approach specifically, was really on the back of understanding their liability. So when you're working with third parties, how do you ensure the quality of the work being done? Because ultimately you have financial liability for the outcome. So I think that's this is almost like a thinking out up front. What is your contractual liability that you want to build into contracts? How do you go about safeguarding yourself as an organization through training, through auditing, finding the right partnerships where you already have an established, way of working together. There's that kind of cultural fit. All those aspects are really important. So again, that's new for us, but you kind of get in a way it's intuitive because it's a human thing, but there has to be that legal contractual side to things as well. So I'm expecting that, I want to go and make I don't want to make mistakes, but I'm expecting to see them, but they're learnings, and that's okay. When you're going into, especially in the scale up side of things, you can think in advance for what you're likely to encounter and build it in up front to try and avoid that, but you can't expect the unexpected. So I'm expecting to see little niggles of things that don't quite go right. So finding the right partner who's also prepared for that, so that you can resolve those issues together. That's a key bit, and that's my real point is, when you've got that partnership model and you might have multiple partners, are you ready to fix issues together as you explore something new? So I think that's a real crucial point, especially for the scale up side of things.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. What would you say, James, is your biggest lesson learned in all of this?
Oh, good question. That it takes time. So one of probably the biggest lesson learned is that we started with one customer segment because it seemed the most obvious to us, and we took a pause to reflect, look at what we've learned, and then we reassessed, and then now we're actually focusing on a different customer segment because of some built-in assumptions that we had early on, largely about some unknowns such as contract liability, all sorts of loads of things. But we changed customer segment group as our key target group, and it's a totally different segment. So that was a big lesson learned that I wouldn't have expected. What didn't seem to be the obvious customer segment initially, but it was kind of refreshing to, it's an authentic kind of lesson that you learn by doing this. And so I think really that came out of testing, trying it, start small, test, learn. I use the word learn as an exchangeable term with fail and learn, but it's learn. You don't really want to fail, but you learn. But start small and take on those learnings and build it and step by step, because also with a significant transformational change, business model change, you need to get that internal senior stakeholder buy-in. So especially when there's a lot of risk or an uncertainty, it can be, you don't want to inhibit the uptake of that internal uptake of that new business model if there are too big mistakes that get made, especially ones that impact your brand image and and the loyalty that we have with customers. So I'd say that we had some lessons learned, but the root cause kind of best learning was, just keep trying small, steady steps, and that will be the path to kind of being successful. I would say that's the best thing that I could advocate to others who are looking to do it as a service.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned earlier that you are kind of at step 1.5 or 2, right? So what comes next? What's next on this journey for Baxi?
Well, like I said, we took a kind of a pause moment to reflect. We're looking at a different target customer group, and so next is run trials in the customer segment. The real next step, the strategic one, is okay, upscale operations. And that's with some of your blogs you've done in the past and your research and work. You've talked about talent and talent acquisition, recruitment, internal culture. So that's a really interesting one because if there's within a kind of strategic time frame, if the business model like as a service is it going to become a dominant business model to work with, what does that look like from your organization? So effective kind of step 3, and by the way, 3 steps is too simplistic. There are many steps, but effective step 3 is is your organization ready to run with it? And so it's about the systems. Do you have all your data lakes and cloud infrastructure in place? Are you turning data into insight? Do you know how to work with insight? Is it true CRM experience internally? And can you do something, to satisfy the customer expectations, to delight the customers? Are you able to do that? Can you meet the operational demands, at scale? Do we have the right talent coming in? What's the next step? How do you ensure that you've got market differentiation going forward? So what kind of AI experts, or what are we doing with AR or VR, to ever improve that experience, both from the operational side, but also from a customer experience perspective. So I think the real next step is operationalizing it, and being efficient and managing that, because otherwise there's a real risk that we get too big too quickly without having that infrastructure in place, and suddenly your business as usual gets harder to do because so much time is taken up with this. So I think there's probably some an understanding, acknowledgement of that, drawing boundary conditions about how big are we willing to get at this point in time, and synchronizing with our organizational capabilities. So that's the next step. That's for us as an organization, is preparing ourselves for a potential real scale up.
Yeah. Whew. So the journey carries on.
The journey carries on. Oh yeah, just but that's a strategic thing, That's like it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, I get it though. I mean, that's the thing. It's like you said, bit by bit, lesson by lesson, and you just keep forging ahead. And I think that's for sure the right approach. I mean, it takes courage, it takes patience, it takes perseverance, persistence, and so good for you for spearheading a lot of that, and good for Baxi for recognizing the need to innovate and working hard to make that a reality.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's I'm lucky to work for a company like BDR because they're in a good place. They've got really strong progressive sustainability targets built into our culture. We've recently done a culture rollout across the whole organization with three core values. One team, sustainable future, customer focus. It's simple and it's really relevant, and so there's already that environment to do all that stuff. So by no means am I doing this by myself. I'm surrounded by some wonderful people to make it happen. That's a really key point, to building that vision. And there's a lot of kind of values and kind of ethical values that are deep on this mission to decarbonize for a more sustainable future. So it's easy to get traction with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gives you something to dig into. All right, James. Well, thank you so much for coming and spending some time with me and sharing with our audience today. I appreciate it.
A pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks. You can find more by visiting us at futureoffieldservice.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn as well as Twitter at The Future of FS. The Future of Field Service podcast is published in partnership with IFS. You can learn more at ifs.com. As always, thank you for listening.